Our first candidate up for your consideration is the current University District Common Council member. So let's get a big hand for Rashid Wyatt.
I'm ready? Yes, you did. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. I'm very open to hearing your ideas and your opinions about the next mayor and what they should be doing and how they should be addressing your needs. As Todd has talked about, we come to the council many times.
If you can move behind the table, just so the interpreter can be
Yes.
next to you, just want to make sure they get on camera. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Don't get I'm just gonna write it.
Yeah. Is that okay?
Maybe over just a little bit, because this is their shot.
Sorry.
That's okay.
A little bit more.
Okay.
I gotta put some tape down here for you. So I'm gonna just let you know a little bit about me. I'm really a community oriented person. My background is in business and banking, worked 15 years at HSBC Bank USA, managing a $16 billion mortgage portfolio. I've worked as a chief financial officer for a couple of organizations, and I also was president of a credit union. I started a charter school. I've lived in the city most of my life, but I have a lot of life lived experiences. And I can tell you, as a council member, duly elected 3 times for the university district, one of the keys to my district has been community engagement. And I think that's important for everyone. I don't care what level you're in, especially right now in the time that we're living with this new president of the United States. We have to listen to the people. We just can't go on our own volition of what we believe or what we don't feel is right to ignore everything else that we've come up through. Because many of us know we've been marginalized, we've been cast aside. I know Todd has come to us many times to talk to the council because he feels as though people with disabilities are kind of ignored. You're always thought about later. Well, in my administration, and again, I don't make empty promises. I keep my word in what I say. So when I get in office, one of the things that I'm going to do is make sure that I create an agenda that you all can see, that we're going to have quarterly meetings to make sure that I'm on task with the things that we've agreed to. Now, you know, the city has a fiscal crisis right now, so I can't fix everything. But you best believe if I make a commitment to you and was created as a priority, because I'm going to be listening to the community. Because again, I can't fix everything, but we're going to create a priority of what things that you believe should be addressed. And so we're going to get that criteria created. We're going to have quarterly meetings. How do you think about that? A quarterly meeting with your mayor? How about hearing something like that, that you really hear from the person who you voted for, hearing from him or her, and making certain that the things that we've talked about are executed. Because so many times we make these promises during the political campaign and we do nothing. We may rush to do it when it's time to get reelected. Oh, we did this, but that's at the end of the tape. What are we going to do now? And so I will create a criteria that will include those with disabilities. I think right now, and I've said it on the floor of the council, that when we have these conversations of projects in our city, why aren't people with disabilities at the table? You know, don't make me feel like I'm an afterthought. Put me in the forefront, put me in the room so that we can have these conversations about how we improve our neighborhood, because that's so important. You know, people on the east side feel like they've been left behind because they have, because they're not at the table. You come to them later on when it's time to run for election, then you want to come see me and talk about projects you're doing. It shouldn't be executed that way. I'm a business person, and it's about planning, and it's about execution, and it's about hearing your input to see what can we do, how can we make the city of Buffalo one of the best cities in our country. Because right now, I'm not feeling so good about it. Because why? People have been left to the side, they've been cast aside, they've been ignored, and it always seems like when it's election time, oh, you're the best thing since sliced bread. Well, I don't operate that way. As a council member, I'm not run around my district when it's election time to say, hey, vote for me. I do my job. And that's what I've done in the private sector. If I don't do my job one year, I won't have a job. So you got to work every day. You got to work with purpose. And you got to connect with people, not because you want to vote. This is something that we just naturally do. This is our community. How do we make people feel that they're a part of our community? And so we do that by hearing from them, letting them be at the table, not just when it's convenient for us, but regularly. And that's what I'm gonna be putting forth. I'm gonna put a game face on city government that's like something you've never seen before. Because I care deeply about this city. I don't just make this as an excuse. I would have never thought I was running for mayor. I can tell you, I went and got my master's 3 years ago. And my professor will tell you, she said, "What are you gonna do?" I said, "I want to get a job as a general manager for an oceanfront property." That's what I wanted to do. Never said I wanted to be mayor. You know, some people want to get to this because they want the power, they want the prestige. I don't care about that. My thing is my family. That's my most important thing. If I told you, when for the most part, when I'm not doing anything, coming here talking to people, I'm with my family. That's the most important thing to me. So I'm an introvert. So going out and seeing everybody is not always the thing that I want to do. But I know that in this job, I have to be extroverted. And I've done that very well, I believe, because I've been duly elected 3 times. I'm not perfect, but you best believe that if you got criticisms from me, as long as they're respectful, I listen. You know, I don't like people calling me names, but if you telling me that, hey, you said you were going to do this and you didn't do it, that's valid. And so that's why when I get in office, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to create a criteria that we're going to have in writing that everyone will agree to and that we can always refer to, so that if I said I was gonna do something and we put it on that criteria and we're talking about it every quarter, then I can keep focused on it and you can pay attention to it as well. So with that being said, I'm gonna close my mouth and answer any questions that you all may have.
Well, all answered once.
Yes,
Yes, you said you're gonna have a quarterly meeting. Who is going to be called? What components that you consider important will be at this roundtable at the quarterly mayor's meeting?
um, I'm still developing it, but the initial meeting is gonna be anybody that's interested, because you know, I have meeting, I just had a meeting, at Expressway Church, on Saturday, and had over 100 people attend. So I know that not everybody wants to come to a meeting, but anyone who is interested in coming to those meetings will be invited. So it's gonna be open to the public.
Yeah, town hall. Yeah,
Yes.
the reason why I'm asking, we're talking about a whole city with concerns, how many people will you be able to entertain at such a meeting if it's for the whole city?
Well, we're going to put it out there and see how many people are interested. You know, we have this thing called Eventbrite, and we can put it out there on social media, send out flyers and those types of things, and find out how many people would like to come. Because I'm interested in seeing how many people are really interested in playing a part in government. Because so many people are turned off because they hear these empty promises and you do nothing. So why am I gonna come and waste my time? I understand that, and I understand it very well why people do not want to come to these meetings, because they feel like there's a waste of time. We already have our decision made. Why should I come? But that's not how I operate. And many people who have lived in my district, come to my meetings, know that's not how I operate. If someone comes to my meeting, they have a different viewpoint than I do, and the people agree with them, that's what it is for me. I said my favorite color is purple. And if you came to me, a group of you said you wanted to be blue, it's gonna be blue. That's how I operate. Because I don't have any agenda but the people's agenda.
This one is a mouthful, but it's my question. All right, with the existing strain on the mental health system exacerbated by the opioid crisis and increase in homelessness, what, if any, initiatives can the city take to expand access to culturally competent mental health treatment for residents, especially underserved communities, that add to instead of relying on those initiatives occurring because of state or federal funds?
Yeah, you know, that's a complex one, and that's one again that I need people's input. People who know this process as far as mental illness and those issues better than I do. And so we need to have those summits that we come together as professionals and say, how can we attack this? I can't sit here and say I'll have all the answers, but I'm willing to bring the people to the table to say, how can we do it? I mean, Todd just mentioned to me that the issue with the lack of access of housing for people with disabilities.
Howdy.
But,
Let me.
but we have not brought you to the table when we're having these conversations, because again, if we're at the table at the time of us doing this, then we won't miss it. But right now, it seems as though we pick people when we need them instead of just having these regular conversations. That's a big one. You know, that's the one that's been addressed with the police department. Almost every facet of our community, mental health, mental issues is a big issue. And I don't think we've done a good enough job in looking at how do we do it as a region and not just as individual groups, because that's what I think I see right now. Individual groups do those things, but I think that we can get more bang for our buck when we look at how do we do it in a unified way, using those resources, getting people engaged, and really looking at measurements. Because right now, I don't know of any measurements. I know some, but for me and what I'm trying to accomplish is that we have to get that information, and so we know how many people are affected, what areas they're affected by. Because right now, and I'll tell you, the city of Buffalo, when we get information, it's piecemeal, and there's nothing really something that I can hang my hat on. When they come to us about financial issues, they don't give us graphs, charts, none of that type of stuff. Well, I'm a financial person. I can tell you, anytime we've gone to a meeting, you got graphs, charts, you got so much stuff, it's overwhelming, but you need the information to make good decisions. So I would need that type of information on how many people are impacted, what areas, and look at how do we move forward, what strategy do we incorporate. But it takes all of us to come together and say, how do we do this in a way that's as impactful as possible? Because I know that those resources are finite. There's not a lot of money out here for all these different groups. But if we can put forth the plan and attack it in a way that is most impactful, I think we get better outcomes. And think we get more people help than just, people falling through the cracks.
I agree, and I can tell you you're in the right place as Winnow or ILC or anything of the Center. We've been providing these services for 40+ years. I hope when those conversations take place that we're at that table.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And a location accessible to all.
Yeah. Hi, Councilmember Wyatt. I'm Emily Watkins. I cover disability for Buffalo Toronto Public Media. You've been a council member for 11 years, and I know that since the early 2000s, it was in the city's charter to have a committee to advise the mayor on people with disabilities, and it just got convened, I believe, 2 or 3 years ago after outcry from the disability community. What have you done in your 11 years as a council member to listen to the disability community? And what do you want to change as mayor in terms of how people with disabilities are focused on specifically as a group to listen to?
Well, I'm not going to sit here and make you feel like I've done something I haven't. I haven't done good enough. And I think that with this new elevation, I'll be able to do much better because I think that you have individuals who have advocated on your behalf, who have come before us. And we've done some things, but again, it's a little bit. It ain't really enough. When we talk about the issue of housing, how do we not have some type of plan to address housing for people with disabilities? It's sad, but again, I think we have an opportunity to do better. And that's why I said again, meeting and having these conversations, developing our priorities, that is constantly in front of us. Right now, that's not constantly in front of us. It's in front of us when Todd or someone comes forth, but it's not in front of us all the time. And I think again, that type of engagement will help to make sure those things are not left in the back room, but in the forefront of how we move forward and how we build our city.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
People with disabilities are in a housing crisis. What will you do to ensure that all housing initiatives launched or partnered with the city of Buffalo have an accessible component?
Again, it's about us engaging and having you at the table when we start having these housing initiatives. Right now, it seems as though, again, you are at the back end. We'll talk about you later when someone comes and they say, hey, what are you not doing about this? And so, again, we need to create laws and at least engage our council members as well. How do we all work collectively? One of the things that is so important right now is that the council seem to work supporting the mayor on almost all initiatives, even if they don't make sense. This year, I voted against the budget. It was 6-2. The budget didn't make sense to increase taxes 8% for people who are already struggling. So I want to lead them in a way that we can do the best we can for people who are marginalized and not seen. Again, but that's having these conversations and prioritizing those things. Housing should be one of those top ones that we're saying when we build houses, just like we talk about inclusionary zoning, making sure that these condos have some type of affordability. We should make sure that these housing units, which should be, as according to state law, have some accessibility. And so we'll make sure that in the forefront as we start strategizing and moving forward with housing plans.
Yes,
Is it?
so, what I'm asking is kind of going on what Kevin was saying about the opioid crisis and whatnot. a lot of people in communities don't want places that, you know,
Does the mayor's vote take precedence over everybody else?
No, everyone has an equal vote, but the budget goes to the mayor for approval at the end.
So you have veto power.
They have veto power, yes. And so, I didn't vote for the budget, and I think maybe some of you know, because right now, I can just sort of this, I didn't notice at the time. The acting mayor has so many family members that work for the city. I didn't notice at the time, but I wasn't voting for it because of that. My biggest issue was the overtime. The police and fire overtime is just off the chart. And with fires being down and crime, violent crime being down, I'm saying make it make sense to me. Make it make sense to the taxpayers that we're going to continue to increase their taxes with something that is not working, not benefiting us. I can't give money to senior organizations. I can't give money to youth because all the money is going for overtime. And so I want to start educating the public on this budget because you don't know. And so I didn't know that all these people working for the acting mayor, which I just think is a problem. It's a problem because we need to make some changes. And I'm not saying cut fire and police, I'm saying cut the overtime because there's other needs in our city. And so I just can't focus on 3 or 4 groups when I have a larger city of 200, almost 280,000 people that have needs. And so that's why I voted against it. And that's why, again, I want to educate the public on this budget process because they need to know. If you're going to get the bill, you want to know, well, why am I getting this bill? An 8% tax increase, and they're looking to increase it next year, and the user fee, and the water. Yeah, I mean, some of the fines I'm okay with, be honest. Some of the fines I'm okay, especially as it relates to absentee landlords. We have absentee landlords that when you don't ditch your gutters, and I have a senior in my district that complains about the landlord, and that every winter, she has to walk out on a sheet of ice because he won't fix his gutters. No, we can't just give that person a $75 fine. We have to give some graduated fines to correct people's behavior because those are the quality of life issues that we must improve in our neighborhoods if we're going to have decent, affordable housing for people in need.
Appreciate that.
Yes.
I've been living in a university district since 2004. I own a home.
Mhm.
And the house that's next door to me has been empty forever.
Mhm.
It was on an auction for taxes.
Mhm.
No one, they bought it, just left the property right back. Then a couple of years ago, they came and put a metal roof on there.
Mhm.
And of course, it's in my driveway, so all the ice comes in my driveway.
Mhm.
And the garage just fell down. The grass in the back is this tall, like way tall. I keep the front of it,
Mhm.
but it's so many rodents in the back of it. I just had to replace my roof because they had birds and stuff living in the house.
Mhm.
But that's one question. The second question is a coworker told me to ask about the ambulance service.
Mhm.
And do they have a contract with the city of Buffalo? Because her daughter waited hours for medical attention and they never came.
Mhm.
So she wanted to know what's going on with the
Okay.
ambulance, because they're not showing up right away. Fire trucks and other police are coming before the ambulance.
First thing is, as it relates to the housing code violations, that's a real issue that the city passed a law a couple of years ago regarding proactive rental inspections. So these houses, these properties are supposed to be actively inspected. And so that those things can be observed earlier and responded to. We're way behind on those things. And it's, again, it seems like when it's not a election year, we can let things slide. But it can't slide for me because every year I gotta answer these calls. When people are calling me, well, the gutters are leaking. They won't fix their windows. We got dogs, we got high grass, all those things. I gotta deal with those calls. Even though I really have little authority over it because I'm just a council member. My job, my primary job is to legislate. If I called the commissioner of public works and said, hey, come remove this snow off this street, guess what he has to do? Nothing. Because I'm not his boss. His boss is the mayor. And so it's those types of things that I'm pushing for, that I want to see measurements, because they're supposed to do 5,000 a year. I want to see those 5,000 happen. Because those individuals who are not responding to the will of the people and being disrespectful, we need to put them in check. And if they need fines, fees, whatever, we need to do it. So that's one thing. The other thing, as far as AMR, we had a meeting regarding them several months ago because they were supposed to be meeting on a quarterly basis and they hadn't been. So again, when we have these issues of lack of a slow response, we're reacting to something that we should have been proactive in meeting. So we have these quarterly meetings, we can be on point and making sure that they're doing the job that they're supposed to do. And so right now, I don't believe there's a contract in place. They've been meeting, but I don't know if they finalized the contract as of yet. And that's something I'll follow up on and ask questions.
I apologize, that might be your last question. Thank you so much. Coming up next is the council member for the South District and the current interim mayor of the city of Buffalo. Let's hear it for Christopher Scanlon. Wait, was right here just a minute ago.
Right here talking stuff.
And money Again, Christopher Scanlon. And you're good to go until we get to the.
Okay, you're giving me the,
It'll be.
all right. How's everybody doing?
All right.
Good, how are you?
Better? All right. Well, good afternoon. I want to thank you for having me in today. As it was mentioned, my name is Chris Scanlon, the acting mayor of the city of Buffalo. A lot of familiar faces in the room, a couple that aren't. So maybe a little bit of background on myself. I joined city government in 2012 as a South District Council member. 2015 became the president pro temp of the council, and in January of 2024, the council president. And then in October of last year, when Mayor Brown left office, took on the role of acting mayor as well. In over 13 years in government now, it's been the honor of my life to be able to get up and go to work every day to try and improve the lives of Buffalonians. And over the 8 months that I've been acting mayor, I think we've been very successful in a short period of time, despite some serious constraints that we've been faced with. Finalized an American Rescue Plan. That's the largest capital budget in the city's history. Just got a budget passed through the city council that starts to turn the corner on the city of Buffalo's finances. We were faced with a $17 million deficit in the current fiscal year when I got in the mayor's office. Through some hiring freezes, we had hiring jobs that were either not mission critical or revenue generating, along with freeze to non-essential spending in departments. We were able to close that gap. We were also faced with a $70 million gap for the upcoming year. But got very creative. We cut $10 million throughout different departments. Froze hiring on $16.5 million worth of jobs for next year that we are not filling. We think we can do more with less. But we were able to keep everyone working. We did not have to lay one person off. We also are very creative on the revenue side. I asked the state for 2 pieces of legislation that will help address our financial situation. Hotel tax on hotel rooms in the city of Buffalo. It'll be the average about $4 on a hotel room. That'll be largely paid by out-of-town visitors who use our services. That'll help us maintain things in the city of Buffalo. And then a parking authority that'll bring in $40 to $50 million in the short term, yearly recurring revenue, and alleviate the city of Buffalo of the maintenance and capital costs associated with our parking ramps. Some people are calling it gimmicky and a one-time fix. That is not the case. We still receive a yearly revenue just like we do now. Only we're also bringing in a short-term infusion of cash to help us over the next 4 years while we adjust the structural imbalance of our budget. And we'll continue to do that. If you look at our 4-year plan, it's laid out how we do that. But we'll continue to address, the cleanliness and safety of our neighborhoods, housing, making sure everyone has access to safe, affordable, high quality, accessible housing. And with that, I can turn it over to any questions.
Question.
Yeah.
You said the parking authority, there's gonna be an estimated $40 to $50 million revenue increase from that. Are these contracts given to private construction companies?
So we own 4 parking ramps, and I don't think we should be in the parking business. So we are establishing an authority a state-run authority that will purchase the ramps from us, and they will operate the ramps.
And they will maintain them as well.
They will maintain them, so, again, $40-50 million one-time infusion of cash to help us over the next 4 years while we adjust the budget. And a yearly revenue from them, and they're responsible for, maintenance and capital as well. So what we kind of, I explained it to a couple people this way. If someone showed up here, say your house is worth $250,000, and someone showed up at your house and said, I'll give you $250,000 for your house, but you can stay in it and hold title to it. And if you need a new roof or windows or landscaping, I'll take care of that as well. And I'm gonna put a lemonade stand out in front and I'll split the revenue with you. So that's kind of the side of it. Yeah.
Hi, Emily Watkins, I
Hi.
cover disability. I'm good, at BTPM, Buffalo Toronto Public Media. I want to ask you a question I asked, Councilmember Wyatt. You know, over the past several years, we've seen the disability community speaking up about issues in City Hall pertaining to how people with disabilities are involved, issues previously with the city complying with portions of the Americans with Disabilities Act. I would like to hear how, as a council member, specific ways that you attempted to engage with the disability community or support efforts that you felt mattered to the disability community.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, I worked very closely with Councilmember Noakowski on establishing the Disability Advisory Committee. Had part of the conversations with the previous administration about establishing Brittany's position, we're all familiar with. A year and a half ago, sponsored legislation that increased the threshold for tax exemptions by $20,000 for members of the disability community. So it's something that we've worked on and a group that we've worked with during my time in office. Right now, it's a little chaotic right now. We have a plan to do an inventory of all of our buildings to make sure that everything is compliant. I know that we are not, and we want to get there. But also taking steps to invest in our infrastructure and things like that to make sure that we are compliant with the ADA. We passed the city's largest capital budget in history, partnering with the schools to make sure their schools are accessible, our buildings are accessible, our roads are maintained, sidewalks are maintained and accessible and compliant with ADA, and we'll continue to do that.
Is there anything, I was just gonna ask as a follow-up, is there anything specifically as a mayor that you can't do now as acting mayor that you would like to do in terms of servicing the disability community?
Yeah, I think it just gives me more time to engage with the disability community, and make sure that they're being heard from and part of the conversation, right? One thing I talk about most as mayor is communication. And if we don't know what's going on in our community, we can't help. We can't be everywhere at once. So if we're not talking to people, business owners, residents, whomever it is, we can't help. First of all, we don't know what's going wrong. We can't fix it. And also, the big thing I tell people all the time is we don't know what's going well. We can't build upon it and make sure that we improve it, close the gaps between the problems. So it's about engagement, it's about communication.
Thank you.
Hi, you wanna keep our roads accessible? How about these road humps? Those are not accessible, they're not wheelchair accessible, the sidewalks are not accessible. What have you done in the past, you've been in Avon?
Yep,
What have you done to correct that?
well, we stopped the program. We stopped the program. I'm not a fan of the speed hump program. For a number of reasons. First of all, some of the things you talked about, some of the damage it causes to our equipment, our police trucks, our fire trucks, our public works vehicles, things like that.
Docks.
Correct. So also I didn't agree with how it went out and how it was decided in the community. I'm talking about communication and making sure you're hearing from as many residents as possible. When that program went out, you heard the number 75%. 75% of people had to agree with it on the street. That wasn't the case. It was 75% of the respondents on the street. So 4 people on the street could respond. And if 3 of them wanted them, they were being installed. And that was a complaint that we were bringing up. I think that it wasn't intentional. I don't think. I think it's just, 75% of the people that responded want it, but it should be 75% of the people there when they were doing it. But I'm not an advocate for it. We've put a stop to that program, and we're trying to figure out what we can do, other traffic calming measures to make the neighborhood more safe.
Question. Over the weekend, it was I wanna say, she had to be 10 to 13-year-old little girl that was coming to us, going to the store on video and Andover. She got hit by a car because it's a pizza shop right there and it's a busy street. She got hit by a car because cars are parking right there, and when you try to look out in public, in the traffic, the cars are going fast.
Yeah.
She was hit right there. Not only her, several other kids was hit right there. From my understanding that, what's that, Lenovo, that's not Lenovo's, the pizza, Andover, what's the pizza place on?
The pizza place.
Avenues. They said that they complained about the traffic right there by making it a one-way street, just like they did LaSalle,
Okay,
the fish market. It used to be a lot of accidents right
Okay.
there. The sidewalks with children, cars parking in driveways that have to make the children not walk on the sidewalk, but go around the car and end up getting hit on the street. What can you do about that?
and people are parking too close to the corner?
No, they're parking in a driveway that cuts off the sidewalk. So
Oh,
children have to
okay.
walk around the car
I got you.
into the street. You have a lot of people come around writing tickets, but they don't write tickets for stuff like that.
Okay, it's a matter of enforcement, right?
Yes.
And whether it's that example or something else, when it comes to enforcement, the way I look at it, it's quality of life, right? Again, that's something I will talk to Public Works, I will talk to the police about heading out to that area, to make sure they're talking to them, see if there's signage, something they can do to deter that. Right, whether it's someone sitting there or whatever else it might be. But I will talk to them about that specific location, but when it comes to enforcement and quality of life, and you're bringing up vehicles, people come into the city of Buffalo and treat the city of Buffalo like it's their playground. Speeding, driving crazy, coming in illegal dumping, stuff like that. And I know I can't go out to Kenmore, Lackawanna, West Seneca, Cheektowaga, and drive around on my phone with my seatbelt up. I know I can't do that. I'm gonna get a ticket. It's about quality of life and it's about enforcement. And we have a tremendous new police commissioner, Al Wright, that I hired a couple months back, who's particularly stringent when it comes to enforcement on that stuff. He's got his officers out on enforcing this stuff. And I truly believe that under his leadership, we will start to see a change. But if that specific spot, I will absolutely go talk to them about it. Bailey and Anna.
Yep, you have it in speed, right?
What we do to increase the access and employment for persons with disabilities?
Yeah, so right now it's tough. You mean with the city or in general? In general? Yeah, well, we gotta continue. It's one thing I talk about most is partnerships. It's, to me, it's the most important thing we have going, partnerships, collaboration, working together to make sure that we're pulling in the same direction to meet goals. So if it's working with the county, the state, our nonprofits, our for-profits, and we can talk about this, ways they think that the Disability Advisory Committee, if they have ideas to do that, avenues where we can improve that, we are all ears. I'm in constant communication with Brittany on stuff like this, so we will work with them and our different partners to see whatever programs we can put together to make sure we're increasing those opportunities.
Thank you.
For me, my question would be more youth-wise, because there are going to be our future. And I'm seeing that she's out there having a lot of difficulties with adults with disabilities. And welcomed children and families. So how do we focus on that in not only the educational system, but in programming, sports and so forth, for that murder ideas?
Yeah. So when you're talking about educational stuff, it's about partnering with our schools, right? We don't have a direct say over our schools, we give them an allotment of money every year. And we don't have a say over that, but I tell people all the time that I think you get a lot of chief executives in cities, mayors, things like that, that don't want to get involved in schools that much. You get pretty toxic politically. I don't believe that. I think we have to be involved. I think that one thing I'd like to see is maybe a couple of appointments to the Board of Education from the mayor, so that there is a bit more of a direct say. I established a tremendous partnership with the current superintendent. Unfortunately, she's leaving. We'll work to establish a quick one with whoever the new superintendent is, again, to implement programs and partner on these things. I'm the father of 3 young kids, and when you're talking about the youth of any ability, there has to be options for them, right? Whether it's you're talking sports, educational camps, whatever it is, we have to invest in that stuff. Our Department of Community Services does a good job. I think it needs to be invested in more, for sure. There's a shortage of those programs out there for sure, but it's, again, we might not be able to fund it all, right? But it's a matter of going out, having those conversations with partners in the community that can come in and perhaps do have the financial resources to sponsor these programs. Because a lot of times the cities were handcuffed with what we have financially, but there's no reason we can't bring other partners into the fold. And I've talked to, whether it's becoming mayor, I've sat down with a lot of people, private industry, government, nonprofit, and said to them all, listen, you've got to be part of the solution in Buffalo to the problems we have a great opportunity. A lot of people look at our challenges and think a lot of negativity. I look at them as an opportunity for us to get better. And when talking to these would-be partners, I tell them, you've got to be part of the solution here. I don't blame them if they haven't been, because I don't think they've been asked to. I don't think they've ever been asked to. So we are told, I told them, now you're being asked. You've got to come to the table. You've got to put your money where your mouth is. You're benefiting from the residents of the city of Buffalo. You've got to invest back in again, whether it's nonprofit, private sector, whatever it might be. And we're starting to see more partnerships pop up because of this.
Going back to safe streets,
I'm sorry? Safe streets?
yes,
Okay,
safe streets. The full-time pedestrian, new blind, new resident of Buffalo. There are several pedestrian crossings that are audible and accessible, but there are many that are not, including the ones that I use daily. What can the city do? Not only to fill in those gaps, but to work with the county and the state to build partnerships rather than passing the buck on the cost of those.
Yeah, again, I'm not looking to pass the buck on anyone. Listen, as mayor, the city level, it stops with me, right? And I'm willing to take on all those responsibilities and one thing I pride myself on is being a convener.
Well,
Bringing people together.
I don't know if the city's passing the buck, but the state and the counties often do. What can we do what can the city do to help foster those relationships so that the buck doesn't get passed in general?
Yeah, I think the fact that I've spent 13 years establishing some tremendous relationships at the county level, at the state level, will lend itself to better outcomes for the city. I can tell you when I was down in Albany a few months ago, advocating for the city of Buffalo, because of the relationship that have been established, it's led to the two pieces of legislation that we need. And I think it'll continue to bear fruit for the city of Buffalo. But again, when it comes to our infrastructure, you're right. There's got to get better. There's no way around that. Whether it's, again, I hate to go back to that, the capital budget, but we passed the largest capital budget in the city's history. A lot of it was, we had major infrastructure projects that we were going to lose because we didn't have the money to upfront it. It's done on a reimbursement schedule. So we didn't have the money to upfront the project. So we got creative. We borrowed $204 million in state and federal money infrastructure projects. So we were jeopardy of losing. We needed to put $26 million up front. We decided we'd get creative. We went out part of the capital budget and borrowed $26 million short term. And that money's reimbursed. And ultimately just going to cost us a few $100,000 for the issuance of the bonds. But also this year, $17 million invested in repaving 200 roads in the city of Buffalo. And those major projects, we're talking about Main Street, Bailey, Jefferson, major infrastructure projects, streets, curbs, sidewalks, lighting, all helps pedestrian. Yeah.
Speaking of like collaboration and communication, like where do you think is like the best place to find information about all these topics? Because I was looking at the website and the only link that I found that actually wasn't working with the financial budget website link, the other website links working.
Well, I think we have a terrible website. To be honest with you, I think we have a terrible website and something we talked about internally, comes completely overhauling it. I mean, listen, they changed it a couple of years back and I don't think it's good enough still. So I think we've got to update the website and have more things centrally located and accessible to people. So I think you can look forward to that because I'm just not a fan of our website whatsoever. But I'll just be perfectly honest.
Good question.
Yeah.
What's your stance on removing police from mental health crisis calls? There's the community responding on this, trying to start here in Buffalo. What's your stance on that?
Yeah, I think it's very tricky. It's, you can lead, I know a lot of officers and, a lot of times calls that may not seem like they could be threatening or could become violent, do very quickly. So I think it's very difficult to send maybe a clinician or a mental health professional or someone else out by themselves. I think they should take the lead on a lot of the situations. And then if something goes south, the officer's there for backup. But we have that at the city of Buffalo. We have the behavioral health team embedded within the police department. Well, one thing we're doing to try and avoid a lot of issues is the commissioner and I put a new program together where we have officers out walking in the community. I want our officers out walking on our commercial corridors, in our neighborhoods, getting to know our business owners, getting to know our residents, and building up relationships. I don't want to see some of the things that happen on the back end of police calls happen. And I think that if you're building up relations and relationships between community and police, you can avoid some of that stuff. The other thing is, we've heard from the community for years. They want to say in police, right? They want to say how they're policed. And one of the things that the officers are doing while they're out, they're gonna put a survey on every door in the city of Buffalo. That you can respond to. It'll take you 2 or 3 minutes, QR code or link, and you can respond to that. We want to hear from residents. How is policing going in your community? Maybe there's something that you're not comfortable talking to a cop about, but you can send it in anonymously through that. So again, I think the survey is gonna go a long way towards helping us to determine policy in the future while we're building up those relationships throughout the community. And the thing I can tell you is it works both ways, right? It's good for our residents to see an officer, can approach an officer, talk to them instead of just the only time you see them was when they're pulling up in their car with the lights blaring and right. You can build up that relationship. It works for the officers too. I can tell the officers that are doing it, they volunteer to do it. They weren't forced to be part of this team. It's something they wanted. We put this out there, who wants to be part of this? We had a lot of officers respond, say they want to get out, they want to walk, they want to meet the residents. So I think you're going to see a tremendous partnership develop there.
As a follow-up to that question, I know in the state's budget this year, Kathy Hochul was able to push through some changes that change involuntary commitments and give police more of a role and more discretion, I believe, in that circumstance. How do you plan to navigate that, especially as you create these programs that place more police in the community at a time where some people with mental health conditions may be nervous about being involuntarily committed under these new rules?
Well, I think one of the program that I just talked about, that alone will help, right? A lot of times, you see people in our community who unfortunately, maybe they're homeless, right? Homelessness is not a symptom, right? It's a byproduct, whether it's mental health issues, substance abuse, whatever else it might be. And by and large, they stay in the same area, whatever else it might be. And these officers out and about, I think they'll get to know people throughout the neighborhoods. Build up a relationship with them, maybe talk to them about some help they need and maybe encourage them, but also the fact that we have the behavioral health team embedded with the police department and letting them come and take the lead on some of these calls. I think it'll lend itself to, obviously there's a concern if involuntary commitment, whatever it might be, if they don't want to go and how that could turn. But if you have those mental health professionals or whoever else with us taking the lead there, I think it'll eliminate a lot of any issues of it.
Thank you.
I also have a follow-up to the survey. So you're gonna leave the survey at the house, but what if the individual does not speak English or has a disability that prevents them from being able to read that, to be able to reach out and complete that survey? And then will the survey itself be accessible in multiple languages and accessible for people with disabilities?
Yeah, we will have that out for everyone. And also I would encourage them to talk to the officers when they see them. And if there's an issue that if for some reason they can't fill it out, they will assist them with whatever they might need.
But if they can't see the officer?
That, you know what, that's a great question. And that's something I will take back and we will work on and figure out a situation. Yeah.
Yeah, I found a breakdown between the people that are in officer as commissioners. They do not respond and respect even community leaders and other ones that are trying to get things done. There's a gap there, because once they get in office and they're there for 10 years or so, they feel like they're not responsible to the public anymore. They their servitude leaves. Example, there were times when, policemen didn't show up. You already have things in place, like you had a CPO program that I knew, got engaged 20 years ago. And then to reinvent what's already there, just enforce what we got and make them accountable to the people, to the.
Are you talking about the walking patrols, things like that?
Yes, because there's CPOs that's been in place, but.
Yeah, but I just don't think there's enough of it.
No, there's
Yeah.
no, there's not, the
Yeah.
biggest district, B district, two CPOs.
Yeah.
Now, how can two police officers patrol that many, square miles? Cannot be done, but the funding was cut from them to be able to do what they need to do. The programs they used to have, the crime watch prevention programs that the, block clubs used to give was cut, and they restructured it, so it's all centered around City Hall. That's just like, in the story where they have people that is, up on top, and they don't know what it takes to make that company or thing work. They have to come down to see what's happening on ground level to make the real differences.
Yeah, so I'm not sure exactly what funding you're talking about that was cut, but this is us investing in the neighborhoods. Making sure that we have more officers out talking to neighbors and business owners, and you're right, 2 officers are not enough. They might be able to respond to the neighbor dispute, things like that. But as far as getting out and getting to know everyone, no, there's not enough when we do that. That's why we wanted to supplement it with a walking patrol like this, so people feel safe, feel like they can engage with their officers. And as far as me, I certainly don't feel that way. I've been to meet with your group, so when I'm certainly not of the belief that I won't come out. I'll go out and meet with any organization, any block club, whomever wants to meet. I will come out and have a conversation so that I know what's going on in the neighborhoods. I can tell you that.
Because we have put, petitions in for stop signs and things to make the Fruitvale community safe a year ago, and have called down consistently. I don't understand, where is the follow through on things that you do, loading signs, stop signs that's needed, and it never gets followed up on or put in place.
I can't speak to the past, but I can tell you, I think you have a way to contact me now. And if you want, you can send me those locations and what they are, and we'll get on them right away.
Will do.
Yep. Yes.
People with disabilities are in a housing crisis. What will you do to ensure all housing initiatives launched or partnered by the state of Buffalo have it accessible to the foundation?
Yeah. So obviously, housing is one of the major issues in our community. It's a major issue in a lot of communities. And I think the city of Buffalo has done a good job the last 10, 12 years, working with different partners on bringing rental units online. I want to build homes. I want to put people in homes.
We want you to build accessible homes.
I'm with you, 100%. So, I want to make sure we're putting people in homes, giving a chance to build equity and that generational wealth that comes with home ownership. City of Buffalo owns 7,500 vacant lots that I don't want, we don't want. All we do, we have to maintain them. It's an opportunity for us to build homes. We're having conversations with nonprofits like Habitat and private builders about how we can put a program together and come in and build as many homes as possible. But obviously, a component of that would make sure that they're accessible. Yes.
In terms of these homes, these properties, what a lot of people are saying are, landlords that are buying up properties, there's signs across, will buy your home for cash, etc. There's even a lot of students that lived in the city of Buffalo, Canisius, UB, etc., that are buying these properties, waiting for homeowners to die. Some of them that are kind of destitute or struggling, that didn't have a lot of money, so they're taking these cash offers, but they're not maintaining them or investing in the communities, or they're purchasing these properties and renting them for $1,000 a room to other college students that don't respect the property, the neighborhood. There's parties that are out of control, there's underage drinking, etc. I live down the street from the former mayor, right by Canisius, and that has went on, and I'd say that our block club has worked really hard to crack down, to knock on the doors, and those parties are starting to say, it's gonna end at this time, here are the trash bags, you have until this time to clean it up. No naked people, no drugs, underage drinking, we're calling the police, but that's a lot of work for us to do, so what are you doing to control the people that are buying these houses that aren't investing in houses?
Irresponsible. Ultimately,
Correct.
right? So I can tell you this, that first of all, your block club, you want me to come out and we'll talk about those specific locations that you have to do and bring
Late Avenue.
law enforcement, permits, inspections, whomever, we can bring them out, just let us know and I'll be out.
Absolutely.
But when it comes to those irresponsible landlords, it's about enforcement. Yeah, I talked about the other, it's about enforcement. The tool we have at our disposal right now, housing court, I don't think works. I think you are given 6 months to rectify a problem, you come back, there's another 6 months, and another 6 months. And you have homes that sit there 7, 10, 12, 15 years in housing court, creating blatant unsafe conditions in our neighborhood. I filed a resolution last year to abolish housing court, because I don't think it's effective. I want to adjudicate them internally with the city of Buffalo, so we have full control over how we're enforcing that. And again, 7, 8 years ago, Councilmember Fontana and I passed legislation where if we are out there, we're enforcing, if we're taking care of property, whatever else it might be, whatever fines are associated with that, we can now attach to your tax bill. And after that 2 cycle, when you go to we can then foreclose on the property and then put it in the hands of a responsible homeowner. And I want to be able to do that all internally. I think the state's been involved with the state appointed housing court. I think it's been, should be the hammer, and it hasn't functioned as it. It's a problem, and I would love to do it internally. But let me know when I'll be happy to come out.
That was the interim mayor's final question. Yeah, like I told you.
No, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I want to get our next candidate started. As he told me on the walk up the hall, first time I've ever introduced anybody studied at Harvard. But used to work for as if our intrepid majority leader Crystal People Stokes. So let's hear it for Anthony Tyler Thompson.
How you guys doing?
Yeah.
I'm good. Happy to be here. You got some questions? Or should I just go off for a quick intro? Okay, absolutely. My name is Anthony Thompson. Born and raised in Buffalo East Side, Kimberly area. Really one of the, I say, most challenged areas in the city of Buffalo, but also in the country. Born and raised over there. I would say I know what the word impossible feels like. That burden of life, having to navigate systems that often overlook you, make you feel like you're unheard. Systems that not necessarily meant for you, having issues navigating those things, convolutions, racism, systemic structure, all in place. So I know very deeply the person with the spirit of Buffalo, how many issues that we have that are perpetuated every single day, and that impacts the everyday person in the city. But I also know the hope, the perseverance, family, faith, education, from the Buffalo public schools all the way to the faculty at Harvard. From being a community organizer to working in the State Department for the Assembly, passing some of the most transformational policies. Between going to HBCU at Morgan State University and finishing off with a double bachelor's from Canisius College in political science and criminal justice. Okay. Yeah, there you go. I've virtually experienced every form of education in this country. Buffalo Public Schools, HBCUs, went to Canisius, a private religious institution. I have 2 Ivy League degrees from Columbia University in negotiation and conflict resolution, and also an PA, Master Public Administration, from Harvard, King School of Government. So at 34 years old, I can say that one of the most educated candidates, if not the most educated candidate running for mayor. And I don't just say that as a boasting brag. I say it because not only do I have the scholarly knowledge, I have the real lived experience. sometimes it matters way more than a Ivy League education of what it feels like to be against systems that are often overlooked. And I use that as empathy and compassion, and then I turn that into action. So addressing systems, structures is the core of my campaign. How can we move Buffalo forward? And I think honestly, there's a big difference between policy design and policy implementation. We could create laws and new policies that sound good, that make great headlines, but we don't have the right people, the right leadership and power to actually implement them in the community properly. It's often not. I can't tell you how many programs, initiatives, grants that are out there, but people can't get to them. The system is so convoluted, it's confusing. Red tape. People try their hardest to go get these resources, but they can't access them. You have to have a law degree or know somebody in the inside group to be able to get it. When does that happen? It further exacerbates the perpetual cycle of people not getting seen, getting heard, getting the resources that they need. So my job as mayor is to make sure that things are accessible. Things work for working people. That all people have whatever they need to have a viable and fair life, a fair shot at life. Well, my name is Anthony Tyson Thompson. I'll be happy to take any questions. Please, I'll go for it.
What relationships have you built to allow you to navigate and do the things that you need to do in community government to be able to institute some of these changes that you're proposing?
Oh, yeah. So, not the most important, my resume is pretty long. Yeah. So, my entire life is service. And growing up in a family like mine, like New York, I have, we learned that service is not a title, it's a way of life. Right? I grew up in the church where we talked about community and service. As a kid, we would volunteer every single Saturday at the soup kitchen, St. City Fall, Main Street. Right? After college, I became a community organizer, working to reform education in the city, building coalitions of people coming together to create transformational change for education. Like I said, virtually every form of education I've experienced. And I know that education is the best way to change anyone's trajectory in life. I don't care if you're black, white, which your zip code is, your ethnic background, your income levels. Education is the key. All right. And then from there, I further made expertise by going to Columbia to study negotiations and conflict resolution. There are so many things in the city of Buffalo that happens that you need to have an eye on how to resolve conflict. At a point, I want to become a nonprofit leader. I have to ask myself, well, do I want to learn how to keep a nonprofit business going? Or do I want to learn how to address the issues that the nonprofits are trying to get to? So that was my catalyst for studying that program. Then I graduated in December 2019, and then a few months later was the pandemic. A few years later, when the vaccination site opened up, I helped run it, doing the hard work of working in a crisis to make sure our people have the health care needed to actually have viable, sustainable lives. That's when I got the call from Crystal People Stokes to join her team, to be her communications director. She had just passed the Mayoral law, which was one of her biggest claim to fame, which not only legalized marijuana, but helped correct the injustices of the war on drugs in the state. That expunged the record of thousands of folks who had nonviolent drug acts, which particularly who were people who are Black and people of color. So real systemic change once again. I worked in her tutelage for several years. Then I became a philanthropic consultant, working for nonprofits all throughout this country, raising hundreds of millions of dollars for organizations like the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, or Caltech in California, or a small Episcopal church in Portland, helping raise money for a roof. So once again, I say this humbly, I am the most world, have the most world expertise, world experience, and lived experience to make an actual difference in our city. Any question?
I'll go next. Over-policing is a huge issue in pretty much all the cities. What's your stance on removing police from mental health sources?
Can you state the question more time? I had the first part.
Over-policing is a huge crisis in the city. What is your stance on removing police from mental health calls?
So it has to be, first of all, so over-policing, I don't think it's a matter if we're over-policing, honestly, I have to say it. It's a matter of how prepared are they to handle those calls. Are they?
Let's go. Go off.
really like.
Right there.
That's good. All right. So are we properly training our officers to handle it? So I'm open to the idea of having also people who are more talented and expressive social work and mental trauma be a part of the police enforcement. But I think the most effective way to do it is to create a task force of people who are trained specifically in mental health responses. Instead of putting that burden on the everyday citizen to be a part of some type of civilian group of people who responds to it, you need to make sure, because at a drop of a dime, any situation can happen. And the conflict that you think that you're going into to solve mental health can quickly escalate. You don't know what you don't know. And we have to make sure our police officers are prepared for it. So when you get a call for a mental health response, having a group of people who are typically trained to respond to it most efficiently, effectively, safely.
I'm gonna follow up to that, because, at Westwood New York Independent Living, specifically Mental Health Care Connection, we actually have for years gone and helped police and educate and train them in responses.
Yeah.
So, what can we do more if we're already doing that and it's not healthy or it's not evolving?
Oh, yeah. So reiteration is so important, right? As a leader, you have to be open. It sounds crazy to say, but you have to be open to failure. To say this thing is not effectively hitting the beat. Listen to the experts. I'm not the expert in mental health, so listen to the people who might be that person. Welcome those people into the room to hear them. Speak truth to the people so they can speak truth to you. And you create collaboration and coalition to further strengthen your policies or your initiatives that reiterates it, makes it more effective in the community. So I don't mean to oversimplify it, but if you can't really break down a complex issue simply, you're not really that intelligent. So it just means that collaboration is super important and working with the experts to make sure that we're getting the job done. And feedback groups are so important as leader. I need to hear what you guys are thinking, whether you like it or not. I want to hear the bad as much as I want to hear the good. So because at the end of the day, the goal is always to make you change. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Emily Watkins. I'm a reporter with Buffalo Toronto Public Media covering disability. I want to ask you a question I've asked every other candidate. How have you purposely engaged with the disability community so far in your career? And what are some specific ways you will engage with the community if elected?
Oh, no. My first job in college, I was working for People Inc. And I was helping this guy named Larry out. He had a developmental disability. And he was completely dependent on others for help, from getting out of bed, everything between to going back to bed. And that experience, it really brought humility. It brought the idea that everyone needs help and how important it is to make sure we're supporting our most vulnerable populations and making sure they have access to the resources that everyone needs to have a thriving life. So it means for me, when I'm talking about campaign, I'm talking about my personal narrative. I'm also speaking about the vulnerability of being overseen and not heard all the time. That creates a lot of empathy that I can understand that we all need help. We all need support from our city government to have a thriving life. So when we talk about whether we're talking about people who are impoverished, people who have disabilities, people who might have racial, marginalizations, Buffalo being one of the most segregated cities in the country. When we talk about Buffalo being one of the most economically challenged cities in the country, there are so many systemic and structural issues at place that creates the issues that exist in Buffalo. We have to address them holistically and compassionately. We have to do it with decisive action with a long-term strategy, not for the sake of headlines or for re-election, because we actually want people to have better lives. Thank you.
Thank you.
What is the single asset that you will bring with you to the office?
Yeah, so policy implementation practices, period. No other candidate has that, at least at the level that I believe I do. That I know I do. I would say policy design and policy implementation, same sport, but two completely different skill sets. I think a lot of the candidates who are running have careers in policy design and making laws that sound good, that can make a good headline, but until you actually are able to implement that into the community,
doesn't really mean much, all right? So you can have a headline that says, oh, we're gonna give $100 million to people with disabilities, right? But the problem is that people with disabilities can't get those resources effectively and efficiently. It's really often not. There are so many things going on with our budget where we allocate money for certain issues, but then we don't disperse it. Or if we do, it's always sometimes too late, not enough. You have to make sure we're taking real measurable steps that creates the incremental change in the city that we need. So as a student who went to the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, that's what I specialize in. That's how we're gonna move the needle forward. Once again, not for headlines, but for actual change. Any more? Hey, well, I want to thank y'all for having me. Sorry. Okay, yeah. I'm hoping this time.
I'm gonna ask her if it's okay for her. Chauncey.
Yeah.
So she was talking about the five artists.
Like, okay, yeah, come on, that's awesome.
Hey, wild, right? Wild out, right? But she lives there.
Okay.
Really, she lives there.
Like in the park area?
Okay, in the area.
Yeah.
And it's wild.
Yeah.
It's like, right, I graduated in '99. Nowadays,
You see what?
you boys are real wild. So people, you know how it worked back then even.
Yeah.
They buy the houses,
Mhm.
rent them out, don't fix them up, anything.
Right.
It's all kids, everything's going crazy.
Yeah.
You're sitting there, and the guy before the acting mayor, he had said, oh, well, we'll just, in my wording, we'll get him out. Well, you can't get somebody out of there
Yeah.
unless there's something going on. What could it possibly be done for someone like her that's having that problem with all the nuisance?
Yeah.
And
So,
you know it's not gonna stop.
yeah.
It's not gonna, it can't.
Yeah.
There's always gonna be alcohol, there's always gonna be drugs, everyone in the bar. It's unfortunate, but it's always gonna be problems. But what could be done, there's gotta be something for her, right, or for the whole neighborhood.
I'm not sure how realistic it is to just kick out a bunch of house owners.
I mean, it's also a statement of fact, I shouldn't have said there's gotta be, I shouldn't have said that.
Well, yeah, it was a little biased in there. I'm not gonna be up on scale too much, but I'll say this that's incredibly hard to do, and he might have great intentions, but those are one of those things that, you know, polished people might say that sound good, but that want to kind of please the person who we're trying to garner their vote for, but not actually have realistic kind of, you know, fruition in the future. I think that as a citizen of the city, that you need to be the voice. For a long time in my life, I felt like I didn't have it.
You know what, it's not that we're looking at just picking out people that brought the property. We're looking at making sure that they maintain the property.
Yeah.
That they're renting the property out, they're charging per room for these students $1,000 per room. But they're also making sure that they respect the neighborhood, that they're not having the drunken parties, that there's not the underage drinking, and then the people running around saying, you know what, the neighbors are attacking me because I'm drunk and naked in the middle of the street, or they're knocking at my door at 7 a.m. saying, told you to clean this stuff up after this party, and we're not going for it anymore. Where, you know what, you respect your homes in Williamsville, Lancaster, whatever, you're gonna respect our homes and our neighborhoods as well.
So, yeah, this is a tough one, right? Because most of our universities are kind of integrated in our urban design plan of neighborhoods, right? They kind of have, you know, inclusive in that. College kids, they're always gonna, you know, want to party. So that's my thing. But like I was saying just earlier, you know, using the voice is so important, right? Yeah, okay, yeah. So, okay.
be
Yeah.
usually moved out after.
I wanna just, because you hit a few different things, right? About you feeling like you're at a standstill, like there's not much that you're right.
In terms, we're just systematically in terms, and it's not just my street, I'd say we have a pretty good handle on it, on Blaine, but Loring, 2 or 3 streets over in other directions, some of the elderly, people that still reside there, there's hot tubs with naked people in the middle of the street. Well, sorry. I graduated from Kanisha, so.
Okay.
So, you know what, just keeping on that, and some of the students buy the properties after
Right.
they rented them, so there's a lot of, but I mean, a few, probably about 5 or 6 that are now buying those properties and renting them out to other students semester after semester. So now there's even a couple of houses that have, student housing and it's forever on rent or whatever. So we're systematically watching them come in and do apartments, and then we're just waiting for them and their parents like, hey, how you doing? Here's some rules of the neighborhood.
Exactly.
Here's my number. I like yours because we'll be talking a lot if there are any problems.
Yeah. So you're already expressing the good, like.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you're already expressing the good, approach to it, right? So one of the first things we learned at Columbia, when we were taking like negotiations and conferences, is that it's never conflict that's the issue. It's a necessary component to life. Like adversity helps you grow, and without it, you stunt your growth. So it's the approach. How you handle conflict in a church is vastly different than how you handle conflict in a boxing event, right? Or at a bar, or with your sibling, or with a complete stranger. So you have to recognize the notes and how you kind of address it. You've already started to say that you started addressing the issues with the person itself, but that might not be enough because they really don't have any kind of, hard stop or accountability structures that make them say to do it. So the next step I would say is use your power of voice and your citizenship to speak now to the university and find ways to not be adversarial with them, but cooperate and collaborate with them as a member of the community. A part of Kenesha is like ethos about kind of how can we come together to make the world light on fire, right? The whole Saint Ignatius thing. So I don't necessarily think that they'll be opposed to wanting to hear the opinions and the issues of the community members. So, but as a leader, as the mayor in office, my goal is to make sure those connections happen. The mayor is I see as just being the city's biggest community organizer. Person comes in with the issue, the resolution, we help them navigate from point A to point B. I mean, it's very break it down to be that simple, but that's really the basis of being a mayor. You're making sure that every person has access to what they need. If you can't do it, you figure it out together. Because when you do it together, at least you're heading in the right direction.
I have one more,
Yeah.
if you don't mind.
All right.
So earlier it was touched upon, you opiate epidemic.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, hopefully not, but it's always a year.
Mhm.
Drugs, drinking, everything. I used to own a bar. It happened a few times there. People get drugs and overdose. The ambulance had to come save them.
Yeah.
How do you feel about all bars having to have training and Narcan dispensers in there in case it can happen? Or areas like yours where you're living, everybody has to have like maybe outside a box, something, or somebody in that neighborhood. Oh, I don't know. Well, how do you feel about that? It's something I was gonna write the president and say all bars can have it, period. You don't have to have it at Walmart. I mean, you probably do. Anywhere you should, obviously everywhere should have it. I feel that's a statement of fact, but I'm gonna believe that one. I'm gonna go with that. Everywhere should have it. I mean, I have to go with that statement of that, I know that's wrong, but
No, that's a public health issue. It's an epidemic.
is that something
Yeah.
the mayor addresses, or does the governor have to do it?
No, I mean, we all need to do it. It's
Right,
public
of
health.
course.
Yeah. So, I mean, so I lived in LA for a few years and I was being a first office consultant and working with some big places. And out there in the West Coast, especially considered like LA or San Francisco, there's a huge opioid epidemic. And people are just on the streets and they're overdosing regularly. So much so, my girlfriend at the time was in medical school at UCLA. She has seen several people on her way to class overdose.
And like Kensington in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and they literally sometimes have the students carry like, Narcan in their bags in case it happens, they can do it. So, the best effective way, at least right now that I think we can do it, is by collaborating with other public health agencies and also with organizations. Maybe not requiring, but really kind of asking and persuading community or businesses, clubs, Walmarts to also have
money,
yeah. So, we could figure that out with the NGO process or with making sure that we allocate money for NGOs who specifically are addressing public health issues and other things. And then just making sure that we have the right people on the ground who are making sure that people have, not just the people, but the organizations do it too.
I think we got one more.
But I got a question in the back right there.
Yeah, hand was up for a while.
Yeah.
Off the bat, what they were talking about with housing, but mine is more for like, communities and for workers. So there be rules or laws in place for people who, are purchasing homes and they're doing home rentals and they're moving houses. Because the moving houses, I have found who have worked in some of my former employers are pretty much scary. It's like you're a regular landlord, you have a house or a space and they have 15, 16 rooms. And yes, it's great, you're getting people off of the streets, they're not homeless, but some of them they're not conducive to the neighborhoods that we're living in. Like there was a Junior house where unfortunately the young man's body was found, who was missing for almost 6 years.
Oh, yeah, the little boy, yeah, the little boy.
You found his remains 6 years later?
Yeah, little boy, the mother died.
And then you have field workers, case workers, social workers here to have to come out and address different issues and concerns of the needs of people and individuals. Sometimes we're afraid. Not everybody is set up to be able to have more than one unit or person to a visitation. So how do we break down things like that? Because we're doing our jobs and we definitely want to get out there and engage and do what we're supposed to, but the safety is a concern for your field work. Because the address may just look like a regular house, and you won't know what you're walking into.
Well, that's actually that's the first time I've heard that issue brought up. So I'm not afraid of saying I don't know much about it, but I want to learn more about it. And as mayor, that's my job is to listen to you. If you have real issues with your safety and of our residents, then I have to take that meeting. I have to sit with you for however long it takes so we can all work together to kind of address it systemically, structurally, efficiently in a real time. So, always be talking, always be communicating. There's an open door policy to my administration. I'm here for everybody. But thank you for what you do.
Thank you very much for your appearance. So much. Remember the card, if you need it, use it. Okay, folks, a little technical moment while we switch from live here in our studio to our virtual participant. He is currently one of the New York State senators representing the city of Buffalo. There he is. Live from a rest stop on the New York State Thruway. Thank you. Senator Sean Ryan.
How's everyone doing? Can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're in this circle. Look, when the next guy gets here. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, it's great to be here, Todd. Thanks for the warm welcome. I'm a little more than 2/3 of the way home from Buffalo. I'm running to be mayor of the city of Buffalo. I think that Buffalo deserves better as a community. We failed at many of the basics for almost a generation, whether it's snow plowing, fixing potholes, maintaining community centers. I worked a long time with the development of disabled community, whether it was my work at Neighborhood Legal Services or the Learning Disabilities Association. And I took that work with me to Albany, and I have been an advocate for the disabled community throughout my career in Albany. There's been a lot of bumps in the last few years. It seems that every governor comes in with a way to sort of secretly cut services by saying they want to do things more efficiently. And I've stood up to governors on that. But one of the things I firmly believe in, and I've shown throughout my whole career in government, is that equity and access must be built into every part of government. And that means inclusive housing. That means accessible infrastructure, public safety that's responsive, that protects everyone, and restoring youth and community programs that work for Buffalo. And I think people with disabilities have been getting the short shrift from City Hall for quite a long time. We're going to have part of our administration's focus be bringing into government those living with disabilities, those advocating for people with disabilities. We need to build it right into the administration to make sure the city works well with everybody. It's part of having a city that's accessible to everybody. And I think over the years, City Hall has ignored or patronized your community. I see that from the outside. I have a feeling how you guys feel towards City Hall, but we're gonna have a new approach. I've been working on a lot of housing issues the last few years, and each of the houses we're going to build under my housing plan will be done with universal design principles. So those houses will be open to everybody. So that's what I believe in, and that's what I've demonstrated for my career. And I wanted you to know a little bit more about me in case you don't know who I am. But I'm also here looking for your support, looking for your vote. I want to be the mayor that brings Buffalo forward, but we can only do that if everyone is included at the table. That's what I intend to do. So thanks for having me today, and let me know if you have any questions.
I have a question. You might have to talk loud if we do that. I have a question. Do I go closer? Okay.
Or maybe go to the
Sorry.
camera.
Okay, sorry for speaking to your dad.
Oh, you're fine.
I have a question regarding, you spoke about universal design. So with that, it's great that you're interested in that. How are you looking to make that affordable for the average Buffalonian? How does that happen?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. So my housing plan is designed at people in Buffalo who make between $40,000 and $90,000 a year. We have taken down thousands and thousands of homes, one at a time, and we're going to rebuild them one at a time. But here's how it's going to work. You're going to get a loan based on your income, and the rest of the cost of the house will be subsidized by New York State, and that amount will be forgiven 1/30th a year for 30 years based on what you would do with your 30-year mortgage. So that's how we plan on making these houses affordable. It's easy to build houses for people who have money, but 2/3 of the city of Buffalo has household incomes well under $60,000. So in order to make housing accessible to all people who live in Buffalo based on their finances, we need to make sure it's actually affordable.
I have a question.
Oh, is this
The computer.
Oh.
I know that you had mentioned like making the housing for individuals that make between 40 and 90,000 a year. Many of the people that we work with have a monthly income that's like $1,000 or less.
Yep.
So are they gonna be able to get into this housing?
Not under this plan, but there's other plans that we have continued to fund, through New York State. So we've been building supportive housing around New York State. And for people with lower income levels, they could go into that housing. They could also go into Section 8 through the certificate program. So there's a lot of different housing programs we have now, but there was no housing programs that were sort of in the gap for the working poor. And this is one more component that you would need to have a comprehensive housing plan that deals with everyone who lives in the city of Buffalo.
Section 8.
No, you can go live in
Section 8. Question. Sorry. Section 8 in Erie County is typically only open once every other year for about 2 weeks. Yep. Maybe a week and a half. So.
Well, we've gone 5 years without opening the waiting list at some point. So it's another underfunded program. And this year we put together in the budget a New York State parallel to Section 8 for people with lower income levels that are on the Section 8 waiting list that we hope we can get into the New York State equivalent of Section 8. And that should help reduce that waiting list. But what you have overall is rents have been going up in Buffalo for the last few years as our population has gone up. But they're only going up this much because the city, in their infinite wisdom, decided to knock down tens of thousands of housing units, which means now it puts a big pressure on the housing market. And the sale price of a house in Buffalo is now above $220,000. But it's really a reflection of our demolitions and less on a reflection of, things are hot in Buffalo. They're only hot because we knocked down so many affordable homes and so many affordable apartment units. I mean, I would say everyone in the room probably has experienced rent going up.
In terms of those affordable homes that we knocked down, I know that a lot of them, or several of them at least in the city, are built around or for people that are working for on the Buffalo Medical Campus and the professionals that are coming in. There's lofts and everything that have went in all over the place to bring them in while pushing people in the city out. So how do you propose to change that?
Well, you change that by having a housing policy that discourages that. Right now, the city embraces that change. They embrace that gentrification. They give subsidies, to people to move other people out and bring in high income earners. So I don't believe in that. And you won't see my city administration doing that. But all the housing you see around the medical campus, all those houses aren't paying any city tax because the city actually paid developers like Carl Palladino to build units that aren't affordable to the average Buffalonian. That's a bad housing policy.
I can't see you.
Yeah.
Hi. So what I'm curious about is when you said you have a parallel concept to Section 8 that you're looking to roll out. What will the criteria be for that? Like how are you going to decide who's going to be chosen and who won't be, since this is such a significant issue in the city? I mean, it's unreal how many people are unhoused. So I'm just curious as to.
We're gonna base it on the Section 8 requirements. So people who are unhoused now would be, top priority. But in terms of the income requirements, we're going to just parallel it to the Section 8. We'll have some minor changes, but by and large, we'll take that, and that hopefully will alleviate the people on the waiting list for Section 8. We know that there's a huge need here because the Section 8 waiting list is so big. The federal government hasn't increased money for Section 8 in years. At one point, the waiting list was 7 years long. But it's an imperative that we do something on this. And this is one of the things we did in the state government this year because, we have Buffalo families living in hotels in Hamburg. They were evicted for owing a small amount of rent. They now have first month's rent security deposit, but they can't even find an apartment to rent. And so the county is paying like $7,000 a month to house people just because they can't find a unit for people to move into. So we got to get a lot more units on the market. I also have a second plan that helps seniors who own doubles, who let close one of the units because they're too poor to fix them. We put a program together for a grant of $50,000 or $75,000 if the senior gets that unit up to the Section 8 standard. Then we would give a grant to complete that work. And that would hopefully, we think there's 4,000 closed up units and doubles around the city. We think that we get those units online. That work's being done right now. That should help increase the supply and either help stabilize or start bringing the monthly rent prices down. It's a huge issue. I have a 4-point housing plan that's been funded 2 years in a row by New York State for a total of $170 million. But I did this as a state senator without the city's cooperation. The city of Buffalo fought me at every step of the way. I know that I'm on the right track. I know that we need to build a lot more housing. We need to renovate doubles, and we need to make a subsidy program available. But there's no silver bullet. There's no one thing that's going to do it.
I have one, just a second part of this, I'm sorry. You were speaking of developers such as Carl Palladino and whatnot. Now, I've lived in some of these places in my younger years. And even though they were like these beautiful loft places that I'd have a roommate and whatnot, they were considered HUD housing. So only one person could sign the lease because they got all these grants for building and whatnot. And these are places that cost a lot of money to live in. So like they were finding loopholes to, basically sort of city and that's taking away from people who really do need housing.
Yeah, it's awful. I mean, the housing policy, a lot of it has just been to sort of serve, developers, not serve the people living in these houses. And that's what we have to stop. Like we have to have a more people-centric housing policy. It's got to be designed to help the people who live in the city of Buffalo, not subsidize somebody to build a brand new apartment building, to bring outsiders into the city of Buffalo. We got to take care of people who live in our community.
Thank you so much for that, Senator Ryan. That was your last question. My apologies.
Okay.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your drive home to appear. The extension of the Senate calendar messed everybody up. We appreciate your thoughtfulness. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Todd. Thanks for the advocacy you do. Primary is June 24th. Hope I can count on everyone's support. And I look forward to working closely and collaboratively with you when I become the next mayor of the city of Buffalo.
I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Our final candidate, Darnell Whitfield, former Chief of Fire Service, Commissioner of Fire Service. Thank you so much for that. Come on in.
Thank you. Thank you, Doc, for being here today.
Do your thing.
Okay, so.
Do your thing.
Okay, hi, okay, wasn't sure the format. My name is Darnell Whitfield. I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Buffalo, grew up on the east side of Buffalo. Got 40 years of public safety experience serving this community, working across the entire city as the Commissioner of Fire, Deputy Commissioner of Emergency Medical Services, Deputy Commissioner of Administration and Personnel. Also, I worked as the emergency manager for the city of Buffalo. During my time as fire commissioner, overseeing like the H1N1, the virus scare, and all those kinds of things. The snow in South Buffalo, 7 feet of snow, Bethlehem Steel Fire, and all other emergencies in the city of Buffalo. I retired in 2017, June of 2017. 2 months later, I was appointed by Governor Cuomo as the Assistant Commissioner of Homeland Security for New York State. So I've worked in the western part of the state, responding to all kinds of emergencies across the state. And so I retired in 2019 from that job. Since 5/14, I've been working across the country for gun safety, victim advocacy, and those sorts of things. You know, I look around my city and I see the lack of services for the least of these. I see the condition of my city, comparatively speaking. I've been traveling the country and felt that this was something that I wanted to do. So that's why I'm running for mayor. Thank you for having me. And I guess at this point, we got questions.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So what are your plans or thoughts about wheelchair accessible and people with disability accessible housing and housing units being built more?
Well, we need to build more housing. There's a housing shortage in the city of
Yes.
Buffalo. Everybody knows about that, but there's an even bigger shortage of housing for people who are challenged, have disabilities in that. So we need to focus on that. That needs to be made a priority of the city, and part of what I've seen in the city of Buffalo over my life, and certainly over the last several years, is a lack of attention to these kinds of things. These are the first things that get cut. These are the first things that are, pushed aside. Those who are disabled, those who are, the minority population, poor people in this community don't get the services they need. So we want to do something about housing. I think we should, before we talk about even building new housing, we have a large housing stock that's uninhabitable right now. So we need to do inspections, make sure that those houses are safe, make sure that they're accessible, make them available to people such as yourself and others in the community. And then talk about building housing, but we need to do it in partnership with this community and with all the other communities in the city of Buffalo. Not do it from the developer standpoint, but make sure that you are included in that conversation, in that plan, to build housing in that, and to make sure that it's safe, accessible, and affordable.
Thanks.
Okay.
How would you go about that?
But first of all, making sure that so there's a lot of laws in the books now. Everybody talks about new housing, everybody talks about new laws and passing this and that. So there's a lot of laws in the book now that the city of Buffalo does not comply with, period.
Yes.
And so the first thing we need to do is make sure that we're abiding by the laws that exist already. There's a lot of things that have already been put in place to protect, underserved communities in the city. And so we need to make sure that we're living by those rules, enhancing them if we need to. And so inspections, I think we need to do housing inspections immediately, make sure for lead and whatever, for weatherization, all those kinds of accessibility. We need to hold landlords in the city of Buffalo accountable for the condition of housing. And we need to make, programs available to people who can't afford to upgrade their houses or whatever. There's a lot of people in the city that are just scraping by, who need some help and who have traditionally not been able to get help. We want to make sure that they get help to fix their homes and that. Then we want to work with the communities, with the residents, bring them to the table with the developers and build housing that's affordable, again, accessible, and that's built to the specifications of the people who are going to live in it, make it affordable to them. We got 7,000 lots in the city of Buffalo. We want to make sure that those go to residents, as if we can't keep those in the hands of community residents in that, so we don't give them away to all the developers in that, so that people own property in their own communities in that. So that's what I would be trying to do, making sure that the people in the communities, neighborhoods, or whatever, own the properties, have access to them, and are put first over the developers and like that. So, I think that that's what we have to do.
How would you recommend that homeowners in the city of Buffalo, black, brown, yellow, low income, moderate income, disabled, senior, etc., go about obtaining these properties or obtaining the grants to fix up
Yeah.
their homes?
So
or
there's
their-
models all over the country. I've traveled to Cleveland, to Erie, Syracuse, to Detroit, to Atlanta. There's models all over the country where they have been able to turn these communities around. And we should stop looking inside and look outside ourselves and adopt some of those policies. So that's what I would be wanting to do. I would want to put together a group of people, representative of the community, an inclusive group of people who would look at these different models, and look at what would work in the city of Buffalo and put something together like that. And make sure that there's access, make sure that we have people who can navigate those things, like not everybody can fill out a grant application. So they need assistance with that. We need to make those kinds of services available to the public so that they're not left on their own device. A lot of people don't get help because they don't know how to navigate the system. So we want to make sure that we make that very plain and clear, give them assistance for that. So we have to build out this office. And we need to have people from the community as a part of that office. Trusted messengers who know their community, who know the needs of their community, and who can help advocate for them. I think that would be important.
My question kind of piggybacks on the same question that you just handled. So in developing those models and those structures for different communities, do you guys have a plan for this ability to live what's not subdivided? And so that our communities can be more communicable? Because I noticed that in certain parts of the city of Buffalo, we have 500 corner stores all over the place, but then you don't have them in other places. I've also known that there are liquor stores and so forth in these areas, but not in other places. So to make these things conducive, along with the abandoned houses and places that we have, are we working with other community structures to be able to say, what does this community need? Don't keep red tape on these abandoned properties and buildings to rebuild them. So then that way they can meet the needs of the community, because you have senior citizens who could make it to Walmart and Targets, but we need to shop, and now of our corner store food is properties. We have a lot of children who they can't cross the streets collectively because it's too busy with trafficking and they're not getting across. We've made some minor mistakes with school bus cameras and cameras on the outside streets, but we can't solve the crimes that are happening.
Yeah, so you said a lot. You said a lot. And so what you're talking about is a generational disenfranchisement or disinvestment.
Yes.
Or lack of attention to a certain area of the city.
To the entire area.
Yeah, so you know what I'm saying? So we're talking about these, we're talking about 4 areas in the city of Buffalo who have never gotten the attention that they've needed and have had wealth extracted from them by people who come in with businesses or whatever. That money goes right back out of the community. It never stays there. Communities never develop. So there has to be a plan. How do we fix that? Well, we're talking about generational issues now. You're talking about a lot. You're talking about public safety. You're talking about food issues. You're talking about all these things. There are some programs in place right now that are not being scaled or not being actually taken advantage of that I think would help. But I think it starts with leadership. It has to be made a priority.
But it's hard to do that too, because not only do I work here, but I own and operate a major dance company and structure for kids with disabilities and about. And it's hard to find placements for them, for kids with disabilities, with this accessibility as far as structures for them, when you here to research and go and have other programs coming. And even with the collective public program that I have here, I can't bring in but so many resources at a time because the resources have to be safe and appropriate, bigger than affordable.
So what, and again, what you're talking about is a generational issue. It's a big issue. It's not gonna be solved overnight. It's gonna have to be solved incrementally. It starts with leadership. Once it's made a priority, then you start building a foundation for those kinds of things. You know, I think it starts with leadership. If it's a priority of the city of Buffalo, then you have a partner to work with. You have someone that will support your efforts, and you get to scale and you get to grow these things. I mean, I understand how frustrating it is, you know, not to be supported and to be working every day with virtually no help basically. And everybody else, you know, it's like we're working against you rather than for you because all of the red tape and everything else. It has to be streamlined. It has to be made available to you. And you need a partner. And that's where I hope to be as your mayor.
Yes.
Hi, Emily Watkins. I'm the disability reporter for Buffalo Travel Public Media. I want to ask you a question I've been asking the other candidates. And you mentioned that there are some laws in the books in the city of Buffalo that have not been followed. One of those I reported on was since the early 2000s, the city was supposed to have a committee of people with disabilities advising the mayor. And it basically hadn't been impaneled in like 20 years. It finally got impaneled in, I believe, 2022, 2023. All that aside, there's been an issue with city government engaging with people with disabilities meaningfully. So I want to ask you, how in your career have you specifically engaged with people with disabilities meaningfully, and how will you do that as mayor?
Well, I mean, I have a long history of engaging with the with the people with disabilities as a fireman, as a leader in the fire service, as a public safety professional. I worked with community to make sure that our response to them was appropriate. We tried to get interpreters for new Americans. We tried to get persons who were able to do sign language and different things like that, so that we could respond appropriately to the calls within our community. Worked very hard to work with senior citizen community, we did in-home welfare checks where we looked for trip and fall hazards and things like that. I think you have to be creative. I always believe that the fire department is well placed to make a difference in the lives of the residents of this community. When you call us out for an emergency or whatever, we respond to that emergency, but we also get to look inside of your homes, inside of your lives, and see other hazards, whether it's a smoke detector, whether it's trip and fall hazards, electrical hazards, whatever it is within your home. And we're able to help mitigate those things by bringing other services to bear. We worked with, the Red Cross. We worked with other services across the city to make sure that as we responded to emergencies, we also were able to mitigate and prevent future emergencies from happening. So, whether we're talking about, child care, having to report to the county or whatever, all those kinds of things, first responders are in a perfect position to do that. And I think that they have now regressed. The truth of the matter is that without leadership, they're not going to do any of those things. And I think that so those are people who maybe we can train them to do inspections for lead, all these other kinds of things. Since we have them responding to the needs of this community, we can do more with them. And I think I would do that rather than try to reinvent the wheel. How will we better use the resources that we have?
Thank you so much.
Great.
Last question. Anybody have one more question?
Retired now? You guys retired now?
What's the one thing you think that all candidates would agree on?
The one thing that all candidates would agree on, that Buffalo is in a very unique position and in a very critical moment in the life of the city and the life of its residents. I think that we all agree on that. Got a budget crisis, we got a service crisis, we got a lot of crises, but at the same time, we have some very unique opportunities. And they're very excited about that. I don't know if they will agree on that or not, but I think everybody agrees we got a budget crisis. That's what they agree. Nothing good.
Sorry, comments?
I just wanted to say that I really appreciate how you brought up how there's so much more that the fire department can do, because I have a landlord who, I lived in a historical building.
Yeah.
And I was disabled, and all the fire extinguishers needed to be replaced, all the drill blocks, and he did nothing until the fire department came when there was an emergency, and they said, hey, you need to do this. So I put him on his feet to do it.
Yeah, when we have emergencies or crises, I mean, we cut down trees, we remove hazards. We take people, we make sure we deliver medicine, we do whatever we need to do. And we have to be creative. Cannot be myopic in our scope. Public safety is much bigger than just lights and sirens.
Right.
It's preventing things that happen. And you hear a lot of people talking about the money, but all of us pay insurance in here, right? Everybody pays insurance, right?
Oh, yeah.
How many actually got a claim on? Most of us never even claim it, and we don't have, but we pay insurance. We pay insurance in case something happens, right? That's what we pay it. Public safety is no different. It costs. And you have some of the best in the world right here in Buffalo. It lacks leadership. And that's just the truth of the matter. Yes, sir.
Just to piggyback off what you said earlier, what's the one thing, if you become the mayor of Buffalo, what's the one thing that you could do to prevent something from becoming an epidemic?
From becoming an epidemic. So you do that by risk assessments, and you do risk assessments by working with those who are at risk, who possibly are at risk, whether it's this community, whether it's another community, wherever, you have to do a risk assessment. You have to understand what it is, you know, what's going on with that. They didn't do that with the budget crisis, by the way. They have not done it. They don't even know why we're bleeding money. So how can you have a plan to fix it if you don't know why? Exactly. We talk about overtime. I know all about overtime because I managed overtime, $60 million budget annually as the fire commissioner, responding to the needs of this community. I manage overtime. I'm the only candidate that knows how to fix that or how to deal with that. And that's just the truth of the matter. That's because that's what I've done. And so I think experience matters. I think experience counts.
All right. That's me giving you the hook, my apologies. Let's hear it for Bonnie Olivia. Before we terminate the Zoom today, again, I want to thank all of you for coming and spending a couple hours learning about your candidates for mayor. I want to thank our co-sponsors, Rupa Coalition and Voice Buffalo. And I want to thank the excellent technical assistance from South Advocacy of New York and the Western region. Thank you all for being on the Zoom today. For those people that are on the Zoom, you think I'm not paying attention to, there you are. Thank you so much for participating. And as a reminder, we're gonna edit this and put these candidates up on our YouTube channel so that you can point this out to your friends and have them watch the candidates that you want them to see. All right. And as a reminder, please remember next Tuesday, if you are an enrolled Democrat, please vote in your party's primary. Right? Primary day is next Tuesday. Not this Tuesday, next Tuesday.
Early voting starts on the 14th.
Early voting starts on the 14th.
I'm already texting you, early vote.
Right.